From traffic to parking, there's a lot of buzz about the downtown district. What are some ideas for improvements?
Well, for traffic is a tough avenue to uh, figure out. I mean, I know a lot of times when you want to develop and stuff like that, it's a good idea to do a traffic study and see how many cars are actually driving through. And, you and I, we both live in Main Street. You know how it is. In the morning, there's a lot of cars going there. In the afternoon, there's cars going there. 6 o'clock at night, everyone's coming home. There's a lot of cars going there. And at night, it slows down a little bit. But that's not like that in most cities, right? So for the most part, like it's always going to be constant traffic there the more you develop. And 113 is a huge connection between Haverhill and Groveland to Interstate 95, right? So there's always going to be traffic there. Both our schools are on that. Well, the middle school, the high school, the elementary school are all on this road. Town hall is on this road. So as for traffic, you'd really have to dig deep into figure out how to slow traffic down, whether we improve other routes in this town, that maybe run in the same direction as 113, and we can update those roads. And as developments are being done in those areas, we hold, developers accountable to updating the infrastructure. One of the things they did in Revere when I was living there was if a developer was developing something, they were responsible for sidewalks, updating infrastructure, updating streets while they're doing the construction, so the burden's not on the town. And I feel it's a good compromise with a lot of developers. If you can get them to, extend a little bit on those projects, then us as a town can take in the growth, but we don't have to pay for the growth at the same time. And at the end of the day, having more, residential, even more commercial, like the downtown area, if you wanted these small businesses and you want to add more small businesses, it's just putting more revenue into the tax stream of the town and allows us to do a lot more things. Another issue I like to look at would be pedestrian safety in this town. We have a main road that runs all the schools, all the major buildings, a lot of infrastructure in this town are on Main Street. There's a huge gap in the sidewalks. You'd be walking from Page School, and if you're walking up to, towards the center of town, you'd be walking on the street for a lot of it, And this road, it's dangerous, It's even when you're walking down to the baseball fields in Bachelor Street. I mean, you get across, you go one side of the road to the other side of the road to get sidewalks and stuff like that, And with a lot of kids in this town, a lot of them walking to school and people, and I get about 20 to 30 people a day to walk by my house just doing their morning walks, And, at a certain point, these people, if they're walking long distances, they're walking in the street, and that's, it's dangerous. And that kind of goes with my part of the development and having putting the burden of these sidewalks and stuff on the developers. This could help, some of the cost of this, right? Pedestrian crossings. I know we get one across from West Newbury Pizza. You hit the button, cross the street right there. Only one in town. We should have a few more of those, especially down near the schools, right? I think that's very important to get the kids across the street and get to where they need to be. You just have to contact the DOT of Massachusetts and really press them on this issue and make it it's a public safety issue, essentially, right? 113 is a state route. I know this personally because I work in surveying. I've done a lot of surveys on Main Street, and the state information is right there. And there, it's tough when you do stuff like that because it's obviously a lot of work that involved with it, right? And when you start working with the state, there's a lot of red tape that goes involved in a lot of things, right? So I think if it's an important issue, and I think it's worth going to whoever the head of the DOT of the state is and being like, listen, we need to work on this issue for the state route, because it is becoming a problem for people who want to walk in this town and get to one end of the town to the other town without having to walk in on the street. It's a huge issue. As it comes to the neighborhoods, there's some neighborhoods that need sidewalks. There's some streets, right? And there's some that really don't because, the amount of, car traffic and stuff is not to the point where it's extremely dangerous. In an ideal situation, you would have every single street have a sidewalk, right? I think that can be accomplished with something I mentioned earlier about, holding developers responsible for doing this stuff. I think that could, take a lot of the burden off there and make it a lot safer. But, you're right. With Main Street, your hands are kind of tied with the state and no matter what they want to do, but you just got to press them, things can be done if you bother someone enough about it, I guess, at the end of the day, you know what I mean? And, and overall, towns need the state for fundings and help and for stuff, for schools and other infrastructure and stuff like that. So it's not like it's to be the first time a town ever asked to stay for something, at the end of the day, You just want to make sure you're not asking for something and the compromise is not worth it at the end of the day, But
So let's look at the traffic first. 2 or 3 years ago, the town engaged what they call a Route 113 corridor study on traffic. So we hired an engineering firm and they looked at the traffic flows, the problem spots all the way from Newburyport to the Groveland line. We had a bunch of community meetings at the high school. We laid out all the maps and people could come in and make their comments. Like a lot of people made comments about the crossing right out in front of Town Hall here, saying it's very dangerous and you have to address that because the crosswalks are kind of like offset. They really don't go anywhere. So with that, we started attacking them. We just finished the project up at Pipestave and Page School. And there has been engineering and survey work done on the downtown district. That's in process and will be going forward. To your point further is the business district as a whole. When we did the master plan, the prior master plan in 1999, that was one of the components that we looked at is how do you revitalize the business district? And you're correct, septic is a big issue down there. It never gained traction. The business owners would have to become engaged in the process. At that time, they did not. We funded the visioning component for a new master plan coming up. We've had to put that on hold because of the changes in the town administration you've noted, but that'll be coming back to life in the fall. And hopefully, that's a big project to decide how do you revitalize a business district. And many people seem to think it's fine the way it is. Back in '99, they gave us some plans for what it could be, which were pretty magnificent, but there was a lot of resistance to that. So you'd have to get the business owners to engage in that and realize what the potential could be. So we can address the traffic, and let me make it clear, Route 113 is a state highway. So it's going to be a long process because anything we do, the state has a lot of input and feedback and a lot of control over that. So, and then it becomes very expensive too. It would be presumptuous of me to say what the vision is because you need to have it should be part of the next master plan, the comprehensive plan, and that will be a separate component within the plan, which it was last time, and then we'll have to decide if the community wants to take action on it. The previous vision wanted to do where the food mart was like a 2-story building, a community, a common septic system in a certain place, things like that. Those are long-term plans that would take the business owners to become engaged. They weren't interested at the time. So I don't know what the vision would be for it. The select board, in conjunction with the state, will have a little opportunity to oversee the traffic flow and the safety, like the way Maple Street comes in is at an odd angle. So some of the conceptual things I've seen are going to be changing the way that comes in and realigning crosswalks and maybe some traffic calming measures through there. So that's one component. Then the other component becomes what do you do with the businesses and the buildings? Do you enlarge the business district? Or, what do you do? So those are much bigger conversations that will come out hopefully in the comprehensive plan with involvement from the community, because it would be dead on arrival if the select board or the planning board said, let's do this, because you don't have community engagement. So that would be a fool's game. So I'm not going to give you my vision for it because it's probably not close to what it even should be. And that's why you don't have to put this in either. That's why I like being in municipal government, because at the end of the day, you get all the input from all the different parties and you come to a solution which is almost always the right solution, whether it was what I thought of the first time or not. So that's the fascinating thing, is to think you're going in, it's like, this is what I would do. But then it turns out like this and you go, that's actually brilliant. So that's the best part, is when you get done and the community came together and got the right answer.